Shalom, welcome to another vlog by Danny the Digger, and this time I am seated in the courtyard of a nice quiet location within the Muslim quarter of the old city of Jerusalem, but it is the place that claims to be the pools of Bethesda, the site where Jesus performed a miracle. And this site is indeed a very interesting archaeological site, but let's start with the scriptures. What does the New Testament tell us about the pools of Bethesda? And it's only mentioned in the Gospel of John. In chapter 5, we read of Jesus entering Jerusalem, and listen carefully because every word here is important. Near the gate of the sheep, he enters the pools of Bethesda, which have 5 porticos around it. Each detail here is important for the archaeological evidence of the site. The event itself is that Jesus sees many sick people, blind people, and others at the site, and he eventually performs a miracle and heals one of them. That is quite interesting because according to John, it is not the only site and time that in Jerusalem he will heal a sick person. We read in another chapter by John that Jesus performs in another source of water, the pool of Siloam, another miracle of healing a blind person. And some scholars suggest that between the sick people here, the sick person here, and the blind person there, maybe he is correcting, he's healing what David cursed. When David takes over Jerusalem in the book of Samuel chapter 6, I believe, he curses the blind and the lame of Jerusalem. And Jesus, being a descendant of David and being a healer, perhaps he performs this specific act on these two types of people as a dialogue with what is recorded about David's event here in Jerusalem. This is not from the New Testament, this is scholarly commentary, but I find that very interesting. But as an archaeologist, I'm asking now, what does archaeology tell us about the place? And it's quite an interesting story. So let's start. Okay, first of all, this is today a French-controlled area, and you'll see that the signs are in French as well as in English. But before we see the interior, I want to start with the entrance. I want to start with the street leading into the site, because it provides a very interesting testimony to validate the site and its location. Okay, today this is a compound within the Muslim quarter of the old city of Jerusalem, and as you step out to the street, you are actually facing the northern side of the Temple Mount. We are just next to the Temple Mount, but more significant, disturbing this car, more significant, there is a gate there. There is a gate that today is called the Lion's Gate, after some decoration of lions placed there in the Mamluk period. In the Byzantine time, it is called the Gate of Stephanos, and there were other times when it was called the Jericho Gate because it led towards Jericho. But perhaps this is the gate that was called in the New Testament time the Gate of the Sheep. And now that is an interesting question. First of all, why are so many cars disturbing my recording, getting me totally out of focus? Okay, let me get in and try to get my act together. Sorry about that. But perhaps this gate was called the Sheep Gate because this is where the sheep were brought into Jerusalem for washing them at the pools perhaps, and then preparing them for the animal sacrifice. And you know what? This is exactly what Eusebius, a 4th century Christian source, tells us about the meaning of the name and the activity that took place here on ordinary basis. Archaeology, however, suggests another possibility, which we are yet to see. But first of all, let's review the stratigraphy of this whole area based on the excavations carried out here in the late 19th century. So first of all, here we go. These are the pools of Bethesda as were found in the excavations. Unfortunately, you're not going to see all of those pools. Most of them are still waiting to be uncovered. We only have about this much, but there are definitely two big pools. And here comes the interesting part. If you make a colonnade around them, you end up having 1, 2, 3, 4, and a fifth one in the dike here in the middle. A total of 5. And that's exactly what the Gospel of John tells us, that it had 5 colonnades around it. Now, in the Byzantine period, a big church is built over the dike to mark the event of the curing of the sick person here. What's interesting, amazing I would say, is that the Crusaders, as usual, the Crusaders messed up so many traditions from the Byzantine period. They still related to the miracle performed by Jesus, but next to it they made a much bigger church that is named after Saint Anne. Anne, Hannah, the mother of Mary. And yes, in the Middle Ages, a tradition developed here that this is also the burial place and the perhaps home of the childhood of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And we will visit this church and see the site that claims to be the very spot where Mary was born. And that is a very interesting medieval tradition. Of course, the New Testament does not record any of this. This is now I forget the word in English. All of the layers combined together, and the cars are honking outside. So let me get into the site to a more quiet area, and of course to see the archaeological evidence. But first of all, I see here another map which I'd like to refer to, if the car would let me. This is a general map of Jerusalem in the time of Jesus. The focal point was the Temple Mount, and the southern part of the city had the Pool of Siloam in its southern end. North of the Temple Mount is where the pools of Bethesda are. And apparently it was not the only set of pools. We have additional pools around it. The New Testament only records the pools of Bethesda and the miracle performed by Jesus at that site. Let's see now the actual site. First of all, as I think I mentioned before, today it is French controlled. You can see Flag of France hovering up there. Bonjour! And in the courtyard itself, there are quite a few archaeological, architectural artifacts from different periods, which one can only guess their time and context. I can see here, for instance, a nice looking Corinthian capital made out of imported marble. If I had to guess, I would place it in the in the Crusaders period, but who knows? Definitely this smaller size capital fits the time of the Crusaders. One thing is quite for sure, this is definitely from the time of the Crusaders because there is an inscription. This is the tomb of Jean de Villeneuve, some crusader that died and was properly buried in Jerusalem. Later the tomb was cleared, but the tombstone is lying here on display. But we are here on a different mission. We are trying to track the remains of the pools of Bethesda. So let's move on. This is the facade of the Crusader era church that rebranded the whole site as referring to Mary, to Mary's birth and childhood. It is named after her mother, the grandmother of Jesus, if you wish, Saint Anne. And maybe it's not the main topic here, but it is an amazing complex. Also because it's fully intact. Unlike most of the Crusaders' churches, it was not destroyed by the Muslims after expelling the Crusaders from the Holy Land. Instead, it was actually turned into a madrasa, into a Muslim school. And in the 19th century, it was repurchased by the Catholic Church, given to a French Catholic order, which maintains it to this day. But because it was reused by the Muslims, it was not destroyed. And look how nicely and intact it is standing. It is one of the best examples of Romanesque architecture in the Holy Land. But again, we're here for a different purpose. The pools of Bethesda. I will return back to this church. And here we go. I have to confess, it's a mess. The pools of Bethesda today contain remains going back to Hellenistic times, the time of Jesus, the Roman period, the Byzantine, and the Crusaders. So you do need some imagination and a good guide to try and make sense of it all. That's what I'm here for. So first of all, let's look for the bedrock. And the bedrock beneath us gives us an important clue. You can see the bedrock there going deep, deep down. And here it has a corner. Yes, this is the corner of the southern pool. The Bethesda pools were comprised of two pools, and this is the dike in the middle. How big was the southern pool? We will see it soon. But this is the very corner of it, the northeastern edge. And over there, a bit in the sun, is the northwestern edge. Now here is something very, very interesting that was noticed by archaeologists. There are steps leading into it. A wide flight of steps leading into it. Now anyone familiar with plastered stepped pools in Jewish context, especially in the time of Jesus, is only one name to call it. A mikveh, a ritual bath. So actually, if Eusebius, in the name, the sheep gate, suggests that this is where the sheep was prepared for the sacrificial activity, it was done in what was designed like a giant mikveh. And maybe both sheep and humans washed themselves here or were washed here. Although the New Testament, both in the name of the site and in the event, suggests a place of mercy and a place of healing, which is also what archaeology suggests, but from the Roman period. I know it sounds very, very puzzling, but that's what all the details combined tell us. But let's try to focus on the size of the southern pool of Bethesda. So again, I just showed you the corner, and actually the rest of it is waiting to be discovered one day over here. This is all a lot, tons of fill over the southern pool, and I know so because archaeologists have uncovered the southern eastern corner of the southern pool. Let me show you. Here we go. Here we go. Let me zoom in a bit. And I know it is quite dark here, you should be able to see here now, again, bedrock. And also, let me see if I can get this into the frame. Yes, you can see the corner here. This is the southern edge, this is the eastern edge. So we are now looking at the other corner of the southern pool. And I hope the camera is also showing just how deep it is. Yes, this is a very big and deep water container going back to the time of Jesus. It's about 40 by 50 meters in size, and it's one of two pools. No doubt that this was a significant water source for the city. Being north of the Temple Mount, it was probably based on rainfall from today's Muslim Quarter and north of it, which would be channeled in the winter into those double pools. Now again, the question is, what was it used for? And the name of the gate, the sheep gate, suggests that it was actually related to preparing the sheep. And this is not only attested by Eusebius, but I heard a very, very interesting testimony by one of my students who was a young teenager here in the 60s under Jordanian rule. And he told me, Danny, the Lion's Gate was also the place where the Bedouins would bring the sheep to trade with the people of Jerusalem. So until the 1960s, I find that testimony to be very interesting. Until the 1960s, it was the place where trade with sheep and the bringing of sheep to Jerusalem kept going. Now let me take you into the dike and try and see if I can reach another corner of this complex. First of all, above our heads now is the Crusader Chapel, but also these arches are part of the suspension to support the Byzantine Church. As I said before, it's a bit confusing. There are several layers of use here. There are a few signs, but they're not always telling the whole story properly. Yes, so now I'm in the fill of the southern pool, and look at the tons of debris that could be taken out of here to expose the full size of the pool. Now I'm walking over the dike, and if we enter here, we should be able to see just a little bit of the northern pool. Now it's home for pigeons, apparently. Actually, I was here about a year ago filming for the Science Channel, and boy was it messy. But we had a mission to do. Yes, we actually filmed inside these waters, believe it or not. Okay, now down here you can see the wall indicating this is the beginning of another pool, the northern pool. And maybe these pigeons can tell us anything else. Yes, pigeons? No? Nothing to contribute? You know that 2,000 years ago your ancestors were a popular sacrifice by the Jews? Do you know that there's a restaurant to this day that sells stuffed pigeons here in the city? I would remain cautious. That's all I'm saying, my dear pigeons. Aha, you think you're safe there? Home sweet home. Okay, back to business. And back to the surface. Here, the sign is telling us that this is now the underground of the Crusader church or chapel that was here. This is the crypt of the Crusaders church, whose main floor is above our heads. Okay, that window facing east was the floor of the medieval Crusader era church that was still relating to the event documented in the Gospel of John. But as I said before, the Crusaders actually emphasized something that they completely invented: the birth of Mary at this site. And on the way out, we will definitely visit outside as well. I'm a bit rushed in time, but I think we can do this. Yes, filming has so many challenges, and when filming at holy Christian sites, you're also restricted in the days and times, because they're usually closed on Sundays, and even when they're open, they're closed between 12 and 2 o'clock. Okay, this is now an additional section which adds a whole new additional dimension to understanding this site. These vats and remains turned out to be relating to the late Roman period, and they were a testimony to an Asclepion, a place of healing. Doesn't that sound familiar? We said that Bethesda is the place of mercy, meaning the Jewish name in the days of the temple might indicate a link to a belief that this is a place of healing. The New Testament records Jesus healing at the place, and then we have archaeology telling us that in the days of Ilia Capitolina, when the city is completely Romanized, the Jews are expelled, and it is a city inhabited by mostly Roman military veterans, this specific part was also related to healing. What a very, very interesting combination. Okay, so this is another layer, but here you have a base with a cross which connects to this area where once one could see here a mosaic floor. It's all covered up by sand right now, but the signs here are telling you that here they also found a small chapel from the Christian times that perhaps related to some saint, a martyrion, a place commemorating a certain martyr. Okay, so once again, the earliest evidence here goes to the Hellenistic period, to the days of the Maccabees. That's perhaps when the pools of Bethesda began to be formed. In the times of Jesus, it was a big complex with 2 pools, maybe related to preparing the sheep, maybe related to additional site where one could purify before going up to the temple. And the New Testament records Jesus performing a miracle there. Then archaeology indicates that it was a place of healing in the late Roman period. Here is now a map showing all of the layers. And the last thing I want to show you is the interior of this amazing Crusader era Romanesque church. Look at this interior design. You can even hear my echo very clearly. This is quite an amazing place to chant, as the echo vibrates the sign so beautifully. Now here you have a sculpture, a Christian sculpture of an adult and a child. The first response might be, oh, it's Mary and Jesus. No, the child is a girl. This is Mary as a girl and her mother, Saint Anne, Hannah. Hannah and Joachim were the parents of Mary, the grandparents of Jesus, and this church from the Middle Ages claims to be the place where they lived.